Can you relaunch the same program or products? How much time should you take for that? Should you change your prices or bonuses or not? And what should you do with your numbers, your targets, and your timeline? I'm going to teach you all of that in today's episode about relaunching the same product or service you've been offering in the past. Hello, and welcome to the Fast Forward Amy Show, the show where we lift your life and business with simple strategies. I'm Fast Forward Amy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode every Tuesday. When you launch for the first time, it can be a real high. There's a lot of adrenaline, there's a lot of work, and you're so excited about doing something new that you give it your all. And hopefully, that has led to really great results. And then after that launch, there's kind of this time frame where it gets weird because you launched, it went well, or you learned a lot at least, and then you have to launch again after a while, and it feels so icky that a lot of people actually choose to not launch it again because they're confused about what to do with relaunching, and they just start focusing on a different product or program. Now, the trick in my opinion, in building a successful business is that you get your baseline very right from the get-go, and that means that you need to be focused on your one core offer. That is what I teach my clients. So when you have products, it can be one core segment of offerings. When you have coaching, it can be one package. For us, it's our Business Freedom Elevator. That is our core business coaching program. Now, the Business Freedom Elevator, by the way, we're closing enrollment in 2 days, so make sure you still go and sign up if you've been on the fence. Our Business Freedom Elevator has been around for a little over a year now, but before that, for years already, I was running the same program in smaller groups. So I have been building on the same program and building on that same launch for years now. So I think it's safe to say that I have a little something to say about relaunching. And if you wonder about relaunching your same offer, you're like, okay, Amy, I'll focus on the same thing. But how? What do I do with my prices? What do I do with my bonuses? Won't people get bored? What do I do? Then this episode is for you. Because in 5 steps, we're going to look at how you can relaunch with ease and attract the ideal clients for you and your business. This is episode 98. It's another whiteboard episode, which are obviously my favorites. And if you want to read my tips later and see some of the things I'm going to write on the whiteboards in printed, you can go to fastforwardamy.com/98 because most of you listen to the podcast instead of watching on YouTube. So you can find all of the calculations there because sometimes calculations in audio are a little bit difficult. The first thing you want to do when you are going to relaunch your same offer is you want to reset. And I'm going to make a little list here of things you need to do because it's very important that you don't forget. So first up, we want to reset. And why am I saying that? Because you have launched your offer before. You have been really focused on what you're, for example, let's just take a coaching program as an example, right? I have coaching programs, easiest example. You have launched your coaching program and you have done it all. You've gone live, you've made stories, you've sent out emails, you've highlighted the benefits of the program, the transformation, what you get, all of that. And now you're going to start again. And when you relaunch, it can really feel like you are going to build on your previous launch, which is what we did last year when we launched our Business Freedom Elevator for the second time. And we made a really big mistake there. I always talk to my clients about opening up about the behind the scenes of our business as well. And I try to do that here too, right? The whole thing of the podcast is it's real and raw, and I want to really show you what works, what doesn't, how we also fuck up and stuff like that, in the hopes that you can learn from it. So what we did is we launched the first time mainly in August of 2020. And then in January of 2021, we launched our Business Freedom Elevator again. And the mistake we made there is that we didn't reset. We didn't refocus on our ideal client who was just starting out in our audience, but we kind of continued where we left off at the end of our last launch. So we thought it was a given that people knew we had a lot of value to offer. We thought it was a given that people knew how much social proof we had. So many things we hadn't considered weren't obvious because we were just continuing. You cannot do that. You need to go back to the drawing board, and that means you reset and you go and make a mind map or a brainstorm about your ideal client. Your ideal client is where you start with your launch. Take some time to make a mind map of 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, where you dive really deep into, okay, who is my client? If we look at the last time I launched, who bought the program, who's really happy with the program, who can we serve better in our program, improve your program as you do that, and really mind map it out and try to find out like who are my ideal clients, why did they sign up, what did they get out of it, how did they transform, and try to go back to actually making those ideal client avatars. We are currently finishing up the launch of our third Business Freedom Elevator launch, and we went so deep in this that it was so much easier to create the content and all of the different launch elements we needed, and to really make sure like, okay, but what does avatar 1 need? Our first avatar has a name, her name is Anya, and we're like, okay, but does this speak to Anya? For example, this podcast episode doesn't necessarily speak to Anya. Maybe it does because she likes to be in control, she likes to have structure. So the fact that I'm using a list here would really speak to her. But it also really speaks to our fourth avatar who's really focused on that growth, who's really good at social media. She might think she's not good at numbers, but we're going to be talking numbers, and she's probably not even going to listen to my podcast episode, but she's going to watch it on IGTV because she spends a lot of time on Instagram. That's how well we know our different avatars, and that's how well you want to know your different avatars as well. Now, that might sound a little bit intimidating, and remember, I've been at this for years with the same type of clients, same type of program. For you, it just means before you think, I'm just going to do what I did last time, before you think, I'm going to work on what I did last time and like build on that, go back to the drawing board and remember that you have new people in your audience who don't know what you did last time, who need to be like led through your entire funnel to become your client. Because remember that a funnel looks like this. Your funnel looks like this, and people start out and they're cold, and you want to get them to be hot, don't we all? And in order to do that, what is needed to get them from cold to hot is you gotta give value. And that's what we forgot until we realized it at the end of our last launch, which is crazy because we always teach this to our clients. We realized we weren't giving enough value. We were pitching the program, but we weren't telling people, or like we had the authenticity part, but we forgot to really show them that we really have a lot of authority in terms of launching and building up your authentic authority and a smart business model and all of that. We realized it at the end of our launch. We went back to the drawing board, made a mind map about our ideal client, looked at the pains, the pleasures, all of that, the transformation. Then we made some kick-ass content for the last week, and we did a couple of hundreds of thousands, is that how you say it, of euros of sales in that last week, because we really like made that switch like, oops, no, always go back to your ideal client. Content for your client. That is what you need to do, okay? Create content for your ideal client that really already benefits them for free. And that's how they will end up being a paid customer. Because when do you buy something from someone? When would you buy something from me? You would buy something from me because you've already learned something from me, right? You wouldn't buy because you're like, oh, that Amy chick, she says dumb shit, I'll buy something from her. You will probably buy something from me when you feel like, wow, I've learned so much for free. That means when I get into her Business Freedom Elevator, I'll learn even more. By the way, I created this episode because I was actually recording a new chapter for my Business Freedom Elevator students about relaunching, because there's a whole launching module in the BFE, and a lot of our students have been asking about relaunching, which I used to struggle with a lot too. So that's why I'm also making this podcast episode, because I thought, if it's something my students are asking, it might be something that also attracts new students for my program, because you might be having the same questions. And this might make you realize that getting into the BFE is a really good choice, always. Okay, so you reset, you go back to the drawing board, to your ideal client, you look at your content plan, all of it, and you just make sure that you can get new clients from cold to hot in your entire launch period. In that launch period, it's really important to be transparent. That's our transparency effect that we use in launches, that we also teach in our BFE and our launching modules, is that you are very upfront about bonuses and prices. Because right now you're like, oh, but last time I gave a discount and I said, this is the only time ever and ever you're going to get this discount. Well, unfortunately, you cannot go back in time, so you can't take it back that you're saying that. But I would just recommend to not say that in your first launch, so that you never really I'm going to say it, that you don't cock block yourself in your next launch, so that you don't launch block yourself. Don't launch block yourself by saying things that aren't true, because you can never lie. You got to be truthful and reliable for your clients. So preferably you're just like, this bonus disappears. And then 6 months later, when you're doing another launch, you can bring that bonus back. What you can't do is, which I know a lot of Americans do in a launch, like, oh, we have a really well-performing bonus, does well, we make it disappear, and then 2 weeks later in the same launch, they bring it back. I won't do that because I feel like that's not nice for my clients. Or if I would be a buyer, I'd be like, but you enticed me with that and now you're bringing it back. I'm confused. But when it's a different launch, I do feel like you can do that. Like if we're giving a mug and we're like, hey, tonight these mugs disappear, for example, and then in a year from now we're giving the same mug, that's totally fine. You can also, if there's enough space in between your launches, you can play around with the prices. You can reuse your bonuses, reuse your prices. Basically, you're just going to be really transparent and you're going to approach your launch as if it's just a launch. So we don't say during our entire launch, we are relaunching. Well, we will say it because a lot of people have been waiting for it. But we also have to assume that a lot of people are new in our audience and they don't even know what the BFE is. So as I'm saying this right now, you might be listening to my podcast for the very first time. And I should not assume you already know what's happening, because a lot of people discover our program and our podcast in like a day before we close a launch, and then I only have a day to get them through the door. So constantly going back to basics, constantly resetting and retelling your entire story is really important. And be transparent about bonuses, prices, but don't think because you gave a bonus last time you can't do that again. You're just basically going to use everything that worked in your last launch and optimize it and do it again. You don't have to sweat it. Of course, if you do it every week, that's a different story, but then I think you just need a different launching strategy. Then your next step is you gotta set a target. And that's also something we have forgotten to do a lot at Team Fast Forward, is you need a target. So if you had 20 sales last time, why not make it 30 this time? Or 100, be ambitious. You gotta set a target that makes you scared. You also gotta do the mindset work that makes you believe that you can actually do it. But you also don't have to set a target that seems so impossible that you give up before you get started, right? And after you've set a target of how many clients you want to hit. So for me, what works is I never really set monetary targets. Sure, last year I set a target that I wanted $1 million launch, but I didn't really. I wanted to buy my house because the bank didn't give me a loan. So I set a target that I wanted my launch to cover the entire amount I needed for my house. And I made it work, by the way. The difference at the end was like 5,000 euros. So on $1 million budget, that was a lot. Like, no, that's not a lot. It's amazing how I was able to make that happen in only 2 months. Obviously, I worked up to that for a long time and like it was a lot of hard work. But you want to set a target. And how I used to approach this when I was getting started working with my fitness clients back in the day is I looked at, sure, it would be fun to make 800 euros a month, for example. And then I looked at, okay, how many clients do I need in order to hit that number? And what would make me feel good and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, so 6 clients a week would be amazing. And then I made it even more specific. I was like, okay, I want 3 clients on Tuesdays, 3 clients on Thursdays. So I made my target into a happy client target. And that is what I would recommend you do, is you don't just set a target, but you make a happy client target. Because I am a little bit... Sometimes I'm a little bit mad because I always teach like, set a monetary target, work backwards from it. And then people just set these outrageous prices, which isn't what you're supposed to be doing either. You don't just want clients, you want clients who are happy to pay for you and you want them to be happy about what they're getting. So set your happy client target. Now, let's assume you had 100 clients the first time. And now for your new launch, you want to double that. Ambitious, but I like it. Like, why not? I tend to have a 3x rule for my goals. I tend to just 3x or 10x my goals. Because, if you aim high, you're going to end up higher too. Gotta believe in it though. It's really important. So what if you would set a goal that's 200 clients, right? We doubled it. Okay, now let's assume we can't just dream about this. Like that's what a lot of people mistakenly think about manifesting and stuff. Is like, oh, you just think about it and then it happens. You also gotta make sure that you're actually doing the work that's aligned with that goal. So we're gonna look at step number 3 of today, which is determine your traffic number. Your traffic number. Because I am assuming as you are relaunching that you had a conversion last time. It might be that you say, oh, I had 100 followers and 10 people bought, or it might be that you had 1,000 people on your email list and 100 people bought, or it might be that, for example, in our case, when we launched our first Business Freedom Elevator in pre-order period, we had 600 people on our wait list and we had 100 people buy within the week, pre-orders, right? So you could say that the bucket I was fishing in was 600 people, and that got me 100 clients. So basically, if I want to know my conversion number, which we need to know in order to determine our traffic number for our new target, I would need to divide 100 by 200, which is, no shit, sorry. I meant 100 by 600. By 600, which is, to be exact, let's have a look at the exact number. That is 16.67%. You have your happy client target. Now you want to know your traffic number that you need in order to reach that goal, taking into account that your conversion will be the same. So what we will do is now we need to go towards this target number. So basically what we did here is we had all of the parameters, right? Because this already happened. So here we had like x divided by y equals z. I know, you never thought you were gonna use that again, but there was a goal behind people teaching you this at school. I just wish they would teach you how to do maths with money. I try to teach my kids all of the things with money because I feel like that will actually benefit you. Okay, so what do we have? Like, this is our formula, right? So now we need to know the 600 amount. How many people would we need if we double our number? Obviously, you know that it's just gonna double because this. But what we can do is literally we can say, okay, we want to have 200 clients. We divide that through the conversion percentage, and that equals we need 1,200 people in our waitlist. And that is what we did with our BFE, by the way. We wanted to triple our launch, so we tripled all of our traffic numbers that we needed in like a hot segment, on a wait list, on a webinar, stuff like that. Those are our goals. That's how we calculate. Of course, it's also kind of like cooking for 2 versus cooking for 100 people. You can't just multiply your numbers when you cook. Like, things change when you have a big boiling pot of stuff. Apparently you cannot just multiply that for a bigger recipe. But I feel like in this instance, as long as you also make sure you can preserve your conversion, this works really well. So if you have a certain target for your launch and you know your conversion percentage, you put that here, your target clients, you put that here, and this is how you know how many people, for example, you would need to get to your webinar where you make the sale if that converted like this the previous time. If you're listening to me, this might not have made the most sense, but I think you will get the gist. Remember, as this is episode 98, you can just go to our website, fastforwardamy.com/98. We always link it up too, and there you can just find what I wrote down here or on my Instagram. I'm very sorry. It's just really difficult to do calculations in audio, which is why I have my whiteboard with me, which is why you should come and watch on my YouTube, because apparently I should spend some more time on YouTube. Okay, so now the fourth step is we know, like, okay, we've reset it. We know who our client is. We have a happy client target. We know what our traffic number is. Now we need to make it happen, which is why you are going to create your timeline for your launch. And you can create your timeline in 4 phases. And I'm not going to write those down. I'm just going to talk you through them. By the way, I have different episodes about launching too that I think you'll like if you're interested in this. Episode 50 is where I talk about how we had our $1 million launch without an ad budget. And episode 84 is where I give my golden launch rules. So definitely go and check out those episodes if you want more about general launch rules, because for these last 2 steps, yeah, you want to set your timeline. You have 4 phases. You have your build phase where you need to get everything ready. You have your hype phase where you got to really get people excited for what you have to offer. For us, for example, that means counting down until we launch. That means filling up our waitlist. That means showing behind the scenes of our launch. it definitely does not mean hiding that you're going to be launching. You want to take people with you in your story. The third phase in our timeline of a launch is you got to prove your value. So you're going to focus on value in your content. You're going to show people how much you know, how much you can teach them, which is what I'm doing by doing this episode, so that they really know, like, okay, I could learn something from this, or this could benefit me, or hey, maybe I could transform like this, which is basically everything you want to do there. Then there's a final phase, which is kind of, for me, it's the permit your buyer phase. It's where you actually give people the permission to buy. So where we have build, hype, proof, and permit, a lot of people only look at proof, even like, hopefully they kind of want to convince people like, hey, yeah, I have value to offer, but they forget to prep. They forget to like show the behind the scenes and stuff. And they definitely forget the last phase, which is where people have a lot of objections and questions. And you think, because people are like, oh no, I don't have the money for this, you think that that means that they don't want to buy. But actually, when people are telling you, hey, I don't have the money, hey, I don't have the time to do this, I'm still following a different course, those are actually all buying signals. So you want to work with those buying signals. And for us, for example, that means in some pieces of the final phase of our launch, we have really focused on mindset, because we know we gotta help people convince themselves that they can afford this, that they can get into our program, that it will be something for them. Because a lot of people are like, is it something for me? And you might be like that too. But so we kind of help them coach themselves through, is it something for them? And that is how we work in our different phases. So what you don't know is I am now saying, hey, in 2 days, our launch closes, make sure you go and buy it. And I'm just giving some more value so you'll really go and buy. But, secret, I am recording this mid-August. It is not October 5th where I'm from. Because we are in our current build and hype phase. So we are really making sure that we have everything prepped for our launch, so we can really be in the moment and we can engage with our clients or potential clients as we are in the final phase of our launch. That makes sense, right? So that's why you got to make sure you're prepared. And when you have done your reset, your happy client target, your traffic number, and you've set up your timeline and your different phases, step 5 is you got to follow your timeline. Like, so many of us, we love making plans, but then we don't follow through with them. I would rather have you follow through with no plan than to have a plan and not follow through, right? It's kind of like, you can achieve a lot with a bad fitness program as long as you stick to it. Whereas the perfect fitness program that you only do once, like occasionally, isn't going to get you anywhere. So if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the fact that I also talked about the different phases, don't be, like, it's not necessary. I'm just going to write down the last step so we have that screenshot. So don't feel overwhelmed. Don't sweat it. The first thing is you got to launch for the first time, and then you can launch a second time, and then you can launch a third time, and you will learn every time. So what I do during the launch, that's kind of like a bonus tip, is I have this little card on my project board where I write optimize and learning lessons. So every time I notice something, I think of something, I write it down there. It can be, oh, when I show this testimonial, a lot of people go to the checkout page. Oh, when I go live at this time, it works really well. When I go live at that time, it doesn't work. Oh, the ideal time to send an email is blah, blah, blah. So every time I notice something that I could optimize in the future or that I've learned, I write it down. And the next time I launch, I take that and I implement it into my launch. And that is how we grow and grow and grow. And basically, if you look at it, that is how you not just make sure you grow slowly, but that is how you make sure you can grow exponentially, which is what you do when you actually make sure you take your learnings into account and run with them. So I was thinking, maybe you haven't launched yet, or maybe like you launched, but now you realize you have a lot more to learn about launching, which is great news. I do feel like I'm good at launching. Me and my team, we even made a bunch of like sweatshirts and stuff that says like Launch Squad. And we've become quite proficient at it. We've had a $1 million launch. We have had sales days of over 200K in euros, VAT excluded, which is amazing. And we have done that because for us, it's no longer a guessing game. We really know what we're doing. We have a tried and tested formula that we teach our clients in the Business Freedom Elevator, but we also want to help you out for free to improve your launches. So if you're interested in learning from us, we've created this launch list, which is like a checklist guide that you can use for your next launch to make sure you're not missing anything. And you can go and grab that for free through fastforwardamy.com/launch list. And have fun with that. It has a bunch of balloons on the cover. I'm sure you'll love it. So go and grab our launch list to fastforwardamy.com/launch list. And I don't have to tell you, but as we are in the future right now, in 2 days, our launch is closing. That means you will not be able to sign up for our Business Freedom Elevator program again. Now, you might not know what it is, or you might be just sitting there thinking, I really should do this, but I am afraid. If you've been listening to our podcast and you've learned from it, and right now, if even one of those things hit home, know that there is so much more that you can do to increase your authority, to attract your ideal clients, and to make sure that you're also just making good money. It doesn't have to be an either or thing. A lot of people think, oh, but I just want to make great designs. Oh, but I just want to help people. It's not or helping people or making money. You can help people and create an incredible impact in the world. And you can make money and have a lot of freedom. And that is what we teach in our Business Freedom Elevator. So if you're interested in that and you want to find out if it's a good fit for you, go to fastforwardamy.com/elevator. Remember, we only have 2 days left to sign up. If you're listening later, go and sign up for the waitlist or whatever. Go and check out the information. This is the program I wish I had 5 years ago when I got started. It would have prevented me from being broke and burnt out and losing my passion for what I was doing, because it teaches you so much, not just about your mindset and your energy management, also by content marketing, email marketing, how to set up a profitable business, a profitable personal brand. And a lot of people think like, oh, but I already know some of those things. Okay, then I have 2 questions for you. But are you doing them? Because that's what I'm going to be teaching you. I'm going to teach you to take action on them and to make it like a non-negotiable to grow in your business. And next up, are you sure you know everything? Because I think there's a lot I can still teach you. And I know it sounds arrogant to say that, but I just don't think. I am convinced that I can help you grow both in your life as a business owner and just like in your business results and revenue. So come and sign up. We're almost closing. That means registrations aren't going to be available anymore. Go to fastforwardamy.com/elevator, and I would love to see you on the inside. Bye.